So in the first part of the weirdest weapons on Detective Conan, we had strangulation with a coat hanger, impaling someone with an umbrella, drowning somebody in red bean paste, and using shelves with knives to stab somebody in the back. And in this part, things will get even weirder. So let's start with number 10. In this episode, Conan, Ran and Sonoko are together with a group of teachers at a ski lodge. Strange things soon begin happening, with the teacher and Sonoko being attacked. Shortly after that, a frozen corpse is discovered, and not much later another person dies. Both men get strangled and everyone gets checked in case they are in possession of a rope or something similar. But nothing of such sort is found. Conan, upon taking a closer look at the second corpse, finds a hair and finds out who the culprit is. Due to the circumstances, he makes Ron solve the case, but by doing so, she gets an emotional breakdown due to the culprit being her former third grade teacher. It is revealed that she is still in the possession of the murder weapon, since it's something that one simply doesn't consider as a murder weapon. The killer braided her hair and strangled her victim with it. This is of course only possible because she's wearing a very long wig, and said wig serves as evidence since it contains the DNA of the second victim, whose neck got scratched during the strangulation. Number 9. The murder in this episode is quite unique, because the murder weapon is a living thing, and it's not an animal. Plants can also be used for murder, as in this episode 315. In this episode, the victim is found hanged on a bamboo plant. Of course, the original assumption is that he was hanged on the plant, which would mean that the prime suspect has an alibi, but Conan figures out that this isn't the case. The victim was drugged, then placed on a rock, and the noose was put around his neck. The end of the rope was then attached to a bamboo plant, and with the bamboo around it cut down, the plant grew so much that it hung the man. And you might be wondering that this is kind of ridiculous, it sounds far-fetched, but actually no, certain species of bamboo are really fast growing. They are a type of grass after all, and some can even grow over 1 meter per day. That's a little over 3 feet for those of you who refuse to use the metric system. Number 8. For this place I picked a death from the very first episode. Yes, the infamous decapitation on the roller coaster. It is one of the bloodiest as well as the most violent deaths on this series, but in my humble opinion it is not even close to the worst death in this series, since the guy died instantly and there are plenty of other deaths where the victim actually suffered a lot. So how was this death accomplished? With a pearl necklace. Yes, a pearl necklace which was made with an iron wire. The culprit was a gymnast who used a trick in the tunnel to get close to the victim, put the iron wire pearl necklace around the victim's neck, and then released a hook that's attached to the necklace. The force and speed of the roller coaster then did the rest of the job. Fun trivia: the decapitation was censored in the anime series by having the blood fountain replaced with what looks like a white laser beam. The special episode 1, which was made for the 20th anniversary, covers this case, and there the blood fountain wasn't censored. It is depicted just like it was depicted in the manga. It's really gory. Number 7. Throughout the series, many objects were used to stab somebody, and while none of them come even close to the ridiculousness of some other things that I've seen so far, like stabbing a man with a corn cob,
There's blood everywhere!
this one isn't that far when it comes to being stabbed with something silly. The episode takes place while the Mori family attends a cooking class, whose teacher is a rather unpleasant woman, so take a good guess at who is getting murdered in this episode. During the class, the electricity goes off, and using the darkness, the murderer wounds the teacher. It is however not apparent at first what actually happened. The woman collapsed and has severe problems breathing, and a small dot is present in her back. She is rushed to the hospital, but shortly after that she succumbs to her injury. Later in the episode it was revealed that the murderer used a sewing needle to stab the victim in the back and puncturing her lung. Number 6. On the sixth spot we have something that everyone experienced. In most cases it is just an unpleasant experience which leaves no injury behind, but the culprit in this case used setting to cause a chain reaction which resulted in an explosion. And all it took was some static electricity. By making the victim wear a wool sweater, he was building up static electricity, and combining this with his car, which was not using a remote keyless system and the garage containing vaporized gasoline, it resulted in the perfect environment for a spark to cause an explosion. The culprit attempted this several times, since it took a few attempts to make it work, and she likely would have gotten away with it if her story was consistent, and of course if it wasn't for that meddling kid. Number 5. Ironic deaths are nothing unusual in this anime. This is also the case in this episode. A pickpocketer enrages one of her victims, and as such she gets bludgeoned to death. At first it seems that some sort of metal rod was used, but it turned out that said object was something the murderer created out of coins. The murdered thief always left a few coins in the pockets of her victims, and the murderer decided to use a shoelace and stack together a lot of 5 yen coins to form a rod, effectively killing a thief with money. And on top of that, with the same kind of coins the thief left behind when she committed theft. Number 4. This episode starts out as a rather straightforward case, but then there's a problem. The weapon is nowhere to be found, despite the attacker not being able to leave. This of course complicates things, and it makes it very hard to find the culprit. Conan however does notice that the lipstick mark has a dark spot on it and realizes who the culprit is and what weapon she used. He does confront the woman and tells her that she used a sharp nail to cut into her friend's throat. By wearing fake nails, she could hide it, and she later chewed it off in small pieces, hence why the weapon couldn't be found. A rather unique attempt of murder, and that's not the only unique thing here, since the victim survived the murder attempt and it turns out that it was all a big misconception. But please do watch the actual episode to find out the details. It is one of the best episodes in my humble opinion. Number 3. This episode is a filler episode where a murder happens at a restaurant. The victim is the owner, and at first it's considered to be an accident, since they just assumed that the vase fell accidentally at him. It was later however revealed that the vase was planned to be used as a murder weapon by having the water inside be frozen solid, and then the vase was placed hanging above the victim, and then eventually the ice would melt and the vase with the ice would fall on the victim's head, killing him. At least this was the plan of his wife and her lover. Conan however finds evidence that this is not what happened, and that someone else is the culprit, who didn't consider the vase murder plan to be reliable. Conan figured out that the murderer is actually Saki, and she killed the owner with a hit to the head with, I kid you not, a frozen fish. Okay, granted I have no experience with murdering someone, but I highly doubt that a single hit with a frozen fish of this size would be enough to kill somebody. Let's move on. Number 2. Episode 434 is not a good episode. It was, in my opinion, very poorly written. The pacing wasn't good, and you can really feel that this is a filler episode, and the bad kind of filler episode. Nonetheless, this episode has one of the weirdest murder weapons. But thankfully, not the weirdest, because I wouldn't want to have this episode as a number 1. So the episode centers around a dog named, I think, La Coeur? It's French, it means heart. It's pronounced absolutely nothing like it's written, and I won't bother learning French anytime soon. Anyway, the dog is popular with the kids, but the neighbor doesn't like the barking dog. Later that day, the mother-in-law of the neighbor dies, and it seems like she got mauled by the dog, as the little wound has marks that fit the dog's teeth, as well as blood being found on the dog. Of course, this doesn't fit with the nature of said dog, so an investigation reveals that the neighbor, who is a former art teacher, made a clay model that matches the teeth of the dog. She knocked her mother-in-law to the ground and then used the clay model to bite her in the neck, resulting in her dying from blood loss. What the actual F? What is this episode? So yeah, oh yeah, the dog got blood on him because he of course tried to lick the woman who was dying, so that's how he got blood. But let's just put it like this, seriously, making a clay model of dog teeth and then biting somebody with that. This is insane. This woman is insane. We are almost at the number 1, so here are some honorable mentions. Murder attempt with a sea snake. Hanging with a pearl necklace, which I originally thought of including, but it really just felt too similar to the murder of the first episode. Then death by using an AC to cause rapid temperature changes, which doesn't go well with having a weak heart. Then using a brush to the face to block a jump and then make someone fall. Attempted murder by throwing a drunk guy on another person. And there's probably more. With nearly 1100 episodes, I think I probably overlooked something. But anyway, enough beating around the bush. Number 1. This murder weapon still amazes me to this day, and it's from the first case Shinichi ever solved. Yes, I'm speaking about episode 162, which is a flashback episode where Ron and Shinichi are on a plane heading to the USA when a murder happens. Megure and Takagi also happen to be on board, and while Megure at first isn't impressed by Shinichi, they soon will see that he has impressive detective skills. The victim in this case had a injury on his neck done by a sharp weapon similar to an ice pick. Shinichi, however, realizes soon what could be the murder weapon, so he asks Ron if he can borrow something from her to test his theory. This might sound confusing, but only women and autogenophilic men are in possession of said objects. Or better said, they wear something that can go unnoticed even with a metal detector or undergoing a body check. The murderer used a bra wire. Yes, a bra wire with a sharpened end to fatally stab her victim in the neck and causing him to die due to the sustained injury to his spinal cord. What gave the murderer away was a rather unnatural movement of her hand, since the sharpened end poked her when she lifted the right hand, so she instead used her left hand to retrieve a bag. I remember watching this episode for the first time, and I remember being surprised back then, which was nearly 20 years ago, and I'm so surprised to this day at what the murder weapon is, and on top of that it gets featured in a great episode. Thankfully, otherwise the dog clay murder would have to be the number 1. So anyway, this was my countdown of the most unusual murder weapons in Detective Conan. What did you think of this video, and was there anything I forgot to include in this list? Let me know in the comment section. If you like this video, please click the like button or share it, since everything helps with the YouTube algorithm. See you soon!